Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nick Forde. I'm the growth partner for ADAPTOVATE in Europe, and I'd like to welcome you today to Translating Company Purpose into Action by a Chief Transformation Officer. So, as we start, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact we're recording this so you can watch the replay. We really want to make today very interactive, so please can I ask you to think about all your questions and your burning issues and to submit them via the Q&A tool on Zoom so we can gather them all for the conversation with Paul later on. We'll run to about 60 minutes today, and depending on how many questions you give me, we'll run through them there. Now, today's agenda, we want to talk about an introduction to OKRs and how they work best in your company. We have an interactive OKR exercise to get you all involved and to get your thoughts and feedback on OKRs. And then I'm going to host Paul in the Q&A where I take through all the questions that you've written down and submitted in the Q&A tool for me throughout, and we'll answer everything for you before we go. Now, I'd like to hand over to Piotr, who's going to introduce Paul and tell you a little bit more about ADAPTOVATE.
Thank you, Nick. Piotr Mocny. I'm the ADAPTOVATE partner leading our Warsaw office. Let me tell you a few words about ADAPTOVATE before we start. ADAPTOVATE was founded in 2017 in Australia. Since then, we've been doubling in size every year, and we currently employ 150 business agility professionals in 10 offices around the globe. We have 3 offices out of those 10. We have 3 offices in Europe, London, Warsaw, and Munich. And our value proposition covers basically all aspects of business agility. You can see the 5 key themes on the screen. Those 5 themes are what we are organized around internally. And as you see, OKRs are one of those 5. We support our clients with integrated consulting and coaching capabilities, so we can support them from transformation strategy development right into execution. We pay a lot of attention to business benefits of the transformation, and we strive to make the transformation sustainable. With that, I would like to introduce Paul, but before I do that, we would also like to know a bit about yourselves. So you will see a pop-up table on the screens in a moment. Please tell us what is your level of familiarity with the OKRs. How are you using OKRs at work? So please select one of those and answer for each of those questions. Okay, we have the results. It looks like most of you are familiar with the OKR concept. We have almost 90% of people here who know something about OKRs, and many of you use OKRs in the everyday practice, in the everyday professional life. So with that, I would like to welcome Paul. Paul is the Chief Transformation Officer at one of the largest Australian companies. And at the same time, Paul is a co-founder of ADAPTOVATE. In this capacity, as a co-founder of ADAPTOVATE, Paul has assisted more than 15 agile transformations in the last 3 years. So if there is someone who knows a lot about OKRs and about agile transformations, that's definitely Paul. So, Paul, welcome.
Thanks, Piotr. Thanks so much. And thanks, everyone, for joining. Hoping I can share some of my experience about getting going. And I think a lot of today is going to be more about how to get started with OKRs. And when I say getting started, I'm talking about, if you're brand new to it or you've been using it for a while, but really want to start using it in the right way across the sort of the whole business. That's what I'd like to cover a little bit today. And so the best thing about sort of OKRs is they're not new. right? They've been around for a long time. They started back in the 70s with Intel. Google made them famous in the late 90s, early 2000s. And since then, many other companies have used them, both in technology, but also many outside of technology. And the reason is they work really well in times of great change, when the context that a company is working in is the market environment's changing rapidly. They work quite well. And so why do we need to think differently about planning when things are changing around us, right? If the market is changing fast, we need to be able to keep up with it and react and change to keep it up with the latest priorities. It's also hard to ensure teams are working on the top priorities. When things are moving so fast, how do you make sure you mobilize your teams around the most important things? And lastly, there's so much to do. I mean, I don't think anyone out there is sitting on their chairs twiddling their thumbs. There's so much to do. But this results in starting so many things and not actually delivering and competing for the work. So how do we think about this? And if you get it right with OKRs, they help us clarify the approach. Like, what are we actually going to do for the quarter, whether you do it quarterly or 6 monthly? They help you focus the effort on the things that matter, not just matter forever, but matter for now. They help create transparency around everyone knows what the most important things are. And lastly, it helps you measure the impact. So it creates that data-driven approach to really get everyone on the same page of what success looks like. So for those few of you that didn't know a lot about OKRs, but for even those that do, let's all align on at least my definition of them anyway. So the objective is the what we want to achieve. That's the goal. To me, that can take somewhere between 3, 6, or 12 months to achieve. They're action-orientated, they're tangible, hopefully a little bit inspirational. And the key result is the measure that we use to measure our progress towards the objective. And that's the one that should be achieved within the quarter. So that needs to be achievable at, typically how we talk about KPIs, they need to be smart. So, but the best thing to think about this is at the end of any period, or even as a check-in, you need to be able to pretend it's like a checkbox, you need to be able to check it off. So we all need to be on the same page of what it is. So what this means is you may have the same objective over the whole year, but each quarter you change your key results to give you confidence you're progressing towards delivering that objective. So maybe a more tangible example of what an OKR might look like. Maybe I'll take a personal one. The objective to spend more time with family in 2023. So that means I'm going to get home by dinner 6 p.m, 15 nights a month, be less distracted by limiting screen time, and I'm going to do 2 activities at least once a fortnight, and I'm going to hold a family outing once a month. Sort of makes sense, right? You think about it, at the end of the month, I can get a checkbox and tick them off if I've done them or not. So one question that I often get is, well, how does this differ to KPIs? And so I thought I'd just address this one sort of up front, which is the way you need to think about OKRs is they are the metrics, they are the metrics that we want to drive a focus on for that particular time period. Think about the hero metrics. So we still need our KPIs, our scorecards, because they're the things that we run our businesses on. That's the list of metrics that help us know if we're running a good business, keeping our customers happy, being profitable, etc. And what we want to do is we want to pull out which ones of those KPIs, essentially the ones we want to make a step change on for this quarter. Think about the hero metrics. If we try to address, this is sort of one of the challenges in the past, if we try to improve all our KPIs, we sort of deliver none. OKRs help us focus on the ones that matter for now. Next quarter or next year, we might focus on something else, but for now, they're the ones we're going to make a step change on. So it'd be good to understand, at least to help guide this webinar a little bit, for what are the challenges that you're facing using OKRs? It might be something from starting, how do I get them started? But also, if you're using them for a while, what's stopping you sort of scaling them and making them effective? Great, so let's have a look at some of these. We're confused with how they fit into other measurement methodologies. I saw a something in the Q&A on that as well, which is great. We'll cover a little bit of that. Too many objectives and key results. Definitely, there are a list of deliverables. Yes, it's often the case where you have your project plan, you copy and paste your milestones, and they become your key results. I'm not sure they're driving the most important priorities. Great question. Bottom-up exercise. Fantastic. Okay, so there seems to be quite a good range there. And maybe let's go into some examples of what are some of the principles that may address some of these. So this is my sort of modified list of principles that help you get started. So I always say strive for the top 5 objectives with at least 3 to 5 key results each. You notice most people will say that you should do 3 to 5. In many large organizations, you're never going to get to 3 early on, right? And probably in a large organization, you're never going to get to 3. So if you say 5, people will give you 10, and I'm okay with that to start. If I said 10, people will give me 20. So I usually say start with 5, and you end up getting somewhere between 8 to 10. And I'm talking that at sort of the top level of large organization. Objective setting should ideally be 40% bottom up with 60% top down guidance. All the OKR books will say the reverse. They'll say it's 40% top down, 60% bottom up. And as somebody raised in the poll, the problem with most organizations is not bottom up planning. The challenge is that top down alignment. So when you start, over index on the top down alignment, that top down guidance, and that'll help create that spine down the organization of alignment. Now, they should be a stretch, and that can be hard to start with. A lot of organizations like to hit the 100%, but at least try and start there from the beginning. One key thing early on, you need to make sure you do not link them to individual performance. As soon as you put OKRs as part of your performance review metrics, you lose the ability to have them as a stretch. But also avoid metrics that take a long time to change. One good example for this is a key result is NPS. I don't think it makes a very good key result because often it doesn't change in a short period of time, in a quarter. And usually there are a lot of indicators or a lot of drivers of that NPS that you can't be sure that what you're actually doing is driving it. Often I'd put the NPS measure in the objective rather than the key result. And they should be sequenced, right? You need to be able to say, this is what we're focusing on now and what we're driving in the future. So whether it be an O for the 12 months, be clear on, in annual planning, you might want to set out what are the key results for each quarter. One other way to think about it is your annual plan is essentially your OKRs as a plan for each quarter. So there was other questions before around, well, how do you know they're focusing on the right thing? And so let's go back to that personal example. We said before that this was a good example, correct? It was measurable. I could tick all these off. So it ticks all the boxes with the OKR process. But let's get into this. Are we driving the right behavior? So if I get home by 6 p.m. 15 nights a month, but I go straight to my office and sit on my laptop for calls all night, is that helping? But I'm ticking that off, but I'm not actually delivering the intent of this objective. Be less distractive. What happens if we love playing Trivial Pursuit on the Wii or the Switch with my family, and that's the way we can engage, right? Is that fails that one, but I was spending more time with the family. For example, 2 activities at least once a fortnight. Does it have to be with the whole family? What happens if I just take my son out? One of them, does that count? And hold a family outing once a month. If I just sit in the backyard and have a barbecue, does that count because it's outside the house? Or if I do a family activity, does that also count as an outing? You see, even something as simple as this, there's probably 10 or 15 questions I can ask, which give a sense of, well, am I achieving the right outcome? And this is why sort of getting into the some of the lessons of what I think makes a good OKR. So it needs to be aspirational. It needs to span those sort of multiple quarters. So if I talk about having your key result, your O for the year, spend more time with the family. Each quarter, I'm going to change those sort of key results. If I think about also too many binary or delivery-based OKRs, and what that means is they're either sort of done or not. So you can get to the end of the quarter and fail, right? You can fail because I haven't hit it. So it's not a great experience, especially when you're starting. You fail all your key results. So you want to make sure you don't have too many binary runs, but often when you start, it's sort of where you have to start. The most important thing, I think, is the third point, which is explain the why. We often use what is called a QBR memo, which has the context above that, the intent of what you're trying to achieve. So, for example, that personal KPI, personal OKR I had above, might have something like, yeah, when I spend time with the family, quality time, we love Trivial Pursuit on the Wii, we love doing X, Y, Z, right? It gives intent of what I'm doing behind, because you can't get it all across in an OKR itself. Be clear on the capacity to run the business. Often you want to load up your OKRs with too many OKRs and you don't leave any capacity for running the business, especially in highly operational businesses. Also, when we say be ambitious about the target in the key result. So how much of it you want, not the number. I often get early on, oh no, I'm being ambitious. Let's just add 4 more key results. So be ambitious about the target, not the number of key results each quarter. And as you grow and make this easy, try not to make this an industry in itself. Find an efficient way to not have them not be a documentation burden, whether it be using tools like Jira Align or things like that. So let's get into a bit more of an interactive exercise. So similar to that personal OKR above, I want us to all rate what we think if we think these are good. Grow the company's online digital presence, increase the number of weekly visitors using the app, increase to 1 million, increase online sales in 6 months. So a bit of a poll on that. How would you rate each one of those? So if you rate the objective and then rate each one of those sort of key results. So looks like we're pretty hard markers on a lot of them, which is great. I'll increase the number of weekly visitors using the app. We were thought only okay. A couple of people thought it was great, but yeah, like the point is, I mean, a lot of you are probably talking about, well, if someone just visits the app, is that good, or are they actually using it? Well, going back, it may be a really good key result. Because let's say the issue was a marketing issue, an awareness issue. It wasn't an engagement issue. If people got to use our app, we had really strong engagement. So let's say the problem was actually getting people to come to the app. And so this might be a really good key result if our data is telling us that getting someone to the app is the most important thing for us. So the context behind this is super important, and that's what you'd write in the narrative above it. We also say increase online sales increase app users to 1 million, right? That's a great one, we say. But is that total people that have used it? Is it people that have signed up? So you can see, even just asking basic questions, you can see here that you can get to the end of the month, tick it off, or end of the quarter, tick it off and think you're doing amazingly well. Then someone comes down and says, hang on, no, what I meant here was monthly active app users. Didn't you know when we measure users, we always do active users? So there's a level of specificity in some of these that you also need to ask, even though, a lot of us thought that was great. You may get a rude shock at the end of the quarter when you tick that one off and somebody says, well, that's not really what I meant. Great. So let's go to, so what's different about this one is it has an order of magnitude, which is quite good. Because when we say on the previous one, increase the number of weekly visitors using the app. If I increased it by 1, that's a tick, right? High five. Great, I got 1 extra one. But the order of magnitude could be very different to different people. So putting sort of an order of magnitude in there can be very useful. What's really good about the second one is these ones, they give you a sense of where you're getting to, so it can sort of set that aspiration. But you may also want to include a from too, so it gives you a sense of the scale of the change. We could make it even better. So maybe let's go to the next one so we can poll it. Strengthen existing portfolio by amplifying value, quality, and supply security. 128 new product developments on shelf, generating new sales of £115 million. 27 packaging design launched, and 0 out of stocks. And 43 negotiations completed, and 2 new buys onboarded. What do we think of this one? Great, so let's have a look. So we thought there was a 50-50 sort of mix on the first one. Strengthen existing portfolio by amplifying value, quality, and supply security. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair comment, right? I think the 50-50 there shows it is quite vague, right? But let's link it down to 128 new product developments on shelf, generating sales of 115 million quid. We all think that's great. So one question I would typically ask on this one, so let's say I put 100 new products on shelf and I got 300 million quid. That's a fail. That's a fail for this one. Is that right? Were we going after the sales, or is it more important that the 128 is part of a new product development that we haven't been able to make success on? So I don't really care if you go other ones. I really need to get that 128 because they're the most important ones. And so even sort of the second one, 27 packaging designs launched. Right? Does it matter? When I see a number like 27, it's sort of, you could argue, misses the aspirational target, right? The 70% type thing. Is this number, out of the plan, and it's actually what we're planning for? So therefore, that might not be good. Or it could be, if actually, no, we know in this the 27 that we've got are the ones that are progressed down, or in this market that are the key ones for us to get on shelf, because it might be, a defensive play against a competitor, or it might be something else, right? So there's many reasons why 27 could be good, or there could be other reasons why it's your specific number. So this is what you'd have to specify in the sort of the context above. And sort of again with the last one, 0 out of stocks through 43 negotiations completed and 2 new buyers onboarded. Usually when I see a bunch of ands in a key result, it's somebody getting lazy that they can't choose the most important one. Again, for this one, let's say I achieve 0 out of stocks, but I don't do all the negotiations. Is that a failure? Or actually is the out of stocks we want? Or is it actually we've got negotiations with suppliers for 43 of them, the key 43 coming up this quarter, and the goal is go through those negotiations and making sure there's no disruptions through those negotiations in out of stocks. That's the why this key result is so important. So what I want you to keep encouraging when you talk to your teams about this is, why is this so important? And then capture that in the context, because everyone comes to this with a different perspective. Great. Let's go to the next one. Construct a large warehouse locker in the London area. Get DA approval, including plans for the location, design, structural details, etc. Sign up 6 construction partners. Get final quote from 12 designers and 4 construction companies. So what do we think? Great. So we're saying construct a large warehouse. I mean, I think the one most people would probably question on this one is, what does large mean? In this case, it can often have, you need those sort of things in the objective as well to specify at least scale. It's okay to have metrics of, 200 million cartons per year, or 2 million cartons per day of what you're looking for. So give some sort of scale of what you mean by large. So I think a few of you would have got that. The second one, again, we're a bit split. Get DA approval by December, including the plans, the design. When you see something like that, you've got to be careful we're not creeping into the how. Key results are the measure of the outcome, what you're trying to achieve. not specifying the how too much. But sometimes you really need to be specific. There's a question, do you put it in the key result or do you put it in the narrative above? The question I would normally ask leaders to writing this down is, are these things the most, so if you get the DA approval, the plans for the location, the design of the building, the structural details, depth of the footings, etc., why did you specify those and not the rest of it? Are these the ones that, you know, you want to get done in the first? Maybe there's a stage DA approval, and they're the ones you want to get through the stage DA. So at least ask the question, why did you specify some and not all? And question, are you creeping into the how you want someone to get the DA approval, rather than the outcome is the DA approval? Sign up 6 construction partners. I usually like these ones like complete or sign up, where what does sign up mean? Does it mean sign up with a letter of intent? Does it mean sign up and onboarded? Does it mean we've just signed an MOU? So the definition of signed up, again, when you come to the end of the quarter and try and tick that off, you could tick it off to say, high five, I've nailed this. And someone said, yeah, but they can't do business with it, yes, because we haven't onboarded them to the finance system. So they're not really signed up. When I meant signed up, I meant they're signed up and we can actually use them. Again, the last one, get final quotes from designers and 4 construction companies. Well, 12 and 4, why? Why 12? Why 4? And you start asking the questions like, well, do we need 12? Is that because it's part of our procurement process? Does our procurement process specify we must have 12 and 4? Does it matter where they come from? Does it matter different sizes? So they're the sort of the questions, again, you want to be asking through the writing of these to make sure, again, at the end of the quarter that you are driving to the, you know, you tick it off and you get it. The one other thing you probably want to also question on all of these is why are you using that key result? So sign up 6 construction partners. Why do we need to do that now to construct a large warehouse locker? Why do we need to do it now before even we have the DA? So at least give people the context. Look, it's really key. At the moment, the construction companies have backlogs of over 12 months. So if we don't sign them up this quarter, we're going to be delayed because the demand on construction companies at the moment is gone crazy. So that's why we're going to have to sign them up earlier than normal. Ah, great. That's why we're doing it so early. Ah, fantastic. Right. So the intent behind why some of these are so important and why they're important now is also important to capture. Because then when somebody's doing this or trying to execute and run this, they don't know why it's so important to get the 6 now. We might go to the last one and then we can get into some Q&A. So activate sustainability campaign across the region, develop the brand strategy, develop the brand enablement, launch the sustainability campaign through social media with an engagement score of 11% and reach 75 million consumers through traditional advertising, television and out of home. What do we think of these ones? Okay, so now we're getting a little bit more harder on our scoring because we know the answer is often more the context. So there's a question on activate sustainability campaign across the region. I see a lot of people say this is okay. In some O's and objectives, be careful of using sort of buzzwords that people don't understand. However, for this one, if you're in marketing, some of these words would make sense to you. And so you just try to understand the right balance between putting in what we mean by activate. If you're in marketing, everyone knows what activating a campaign means. But if you're outside of marketing, you might have no idea. It just might sound like a buzzword. So again, think about the audience more broadly that this is going to. If this is an OKR within the marketing team, probably fine. If it's elevated to sort of the business level and across the group or across an organization, maybe you're going to have to want to think about some of those, marketing buzzwords. Next one, we thought it's pretty okay, but not great. Develop the sustainability brand strategy, communication and experience and proposition system. So why is that not good? Well, it's a deliverable, right? I've developed it, but how do I know I've developed it? So try to think about what's the outcome you're trying to do from this. And the best thing about marketing, often the tick of once you've got the brand strategy, the communication, and all that sort of stuff done, and also the next one, scorecard and launch plans, is the whole goal of doing that is to get funding for the campaign. So maybe you might want to combine those two key results and to say, get funding approved for the sustainability campaign for Q1 or for this financial year. And those two key results are more about the how you get funding rather than what you're trying to achieve. So the key result could be the what, funding approved for the campaign. How you do that, let the team figure that out, whether, to get that funding, of course, reading the, standards and best practices in marketing in your organization. You need a brand strategy, you need a comms plan, you need a brand enablement scorecard, you need metrics, you need launch plans to get the funding. So think about the outcome might be funding. These tend to specify the how. On the last one, people say, this is good. You're telling me how. So let's say I launched a pop-up in the app, which had an engagement score of 50%. Is that failing? Did I fail? Or no, actually, I really want social media here because the last 4 campaigns we ran, we did really horrible on social media. So again, what are OKRs for is focus. I want you to focus on nailing the social media because we're hopeless at it. And let's go for an engagement score of 11 because the last ones we got an engagement score of 1. So again, give context around it. And again, reach bottom one sort of has the same challenges with it. 75 million consumers through traditional advertising, television, out of home. I would ask the question, if we got 100 million consumers through a viral TikTok video, is that a failure? Well, in this case, yes, it would be a failure. Or is it, again, same thing, we're putting so much time and money into traditional advertising, and it's worked on other campaigns, but the sustainability ones, it just hasn't worked. So I really need us to focus on nailing our traditional advertising, television, and out of home. Because our research is saying that other people are doing it fine, but we're not. Versus, actually, I'm being too prescriptive on the how. Do I really just care about the number of consumers, or do I care about the next bit of it? So rather than sort of being too specific, I know you're specifying the how, you're not allowed to do that. Ask why you're doing it. So if we think about, hopefully that gives you some sort of element of the real value behind some of OKRs is actually the process behind it. And maybe I can take you through, what we typically put the process is to have a conversation around these OKRs. We often implement at many of the transformations that I've been part of is what we call as a quarterly delivery cycle, or a QBR, which is the annual planning into a quarterly review cycle, where you set the OKRs, you get the team to validate the capacity against them, you make sure you've got the right capacity and funding approved at the last one, and then you measure throughout the quarter. And then you cycle that throughout the quarter. So you set your roadmap of OKRs in the annual planning, and you refine them each quarter as you go. And maybe a quick tip on to get started, if you want to start this, start with sort of a pilot of it. And the best way to, I think, to start with is to start like right at the top layer, whatever area you're in, creates transparency. The goal of the first one is to write a memo, write your OKRs with a reduced scope, like just pick the top level or in one area and get people used to it. Get people used to understanding why we need to write the memo, the context behind what an OKR looks like. Then expand it just by expanding scope, broaden the scope, get more people involved. But you might only do it just for the memo part or just for the QBR bit, the bit right at the beginning of the cycle. And then as you scale, you might bring in other components like more detailed big room plannings or more formal investment processes in what we call the quarterly investment councils. And then as you scale, we typically find the best one is then you start scaling down the organization. You start cascading them down, if that makes sense. So I'll open it up now to the Q&A. Piotr, is there any or questions on there that you'd like me to answer? Or Nick?
Yep, yep, sure, Paul. So thank you very much for that. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Please can I ask you again to think about the points Paul's made. If you have any Q&As, please put them through the Zoom Q&A tool. I'll collate them and add them to the ones I've got on my list, and we'll work through them now with Paul. First one I've got, Paul, is how are OKRs different from SMART goals? And I think you started to touch on that earlier on.
Yeah, so the concept of SMART in general is to just make it specific, measurable, actionable, and make it tangible, right? That's the concept behind it. And SMART goals are making a goal that's tangible. To me, the difference with OKRs is typically the time element towards that. So the SMART goal is close enough to your objective. If you had to make some close analogy, that's what you're trying to achieve. But rather than just having this aspirational goal, you've got to then do a plan behind it, right? Great plan. But so what OKRs do is add those key results, which give you the measure, which give you confidence that you're going to progress towards that goal. So the SMART goals sort of framework typically says set that and set a plan and project management and tick it off yourself. The OKRs make the objective similar to a goal, but the key results give you that little bit of discipline about regular small, checking them off, getting progress to make sure you're testing and learning and working towards those overall goals or objectives. Hopefully that answers that question.
Yep, thank you. Here's another one I've got. How do you handle dependencies between your key results and also between key results depending on the outputs of another department?
Yeah, so I'll answer the first part of it. The key results, when we say dependencies, usually often it's a time dependency, right? I need to get this done and then this done and this done. You can use that to your advantage, right? Which says, actually, throughout the quarter, I want to show progress. So I might have, as you saw through that cycle, a mid-quarter check-in. So what you also don't want to get to is all your key results are ticked off only at the very last bit of the quarter, because that's still crossing your fingers, hoping it's going to get done and waiting to the last bit of the quarter. So it can be quite good to have even this key result sequence. So midway through the quarter, for example, I need to launch the marketing campaign by midway through the quarter. The next key result by getting 500 responses or click call to actions on that. And the last one might be 50% of those sign up, right? That's dependent, right? If you don't launch the marketing campaign, you're not going to get the call to action. If you don't get people doing call to action, you're not going to get the sign-ups. So there's dependencies in that way. If there's dependencies like they're conflicting, that's when you need to actually ask the question, what is the most important one for you to succeed? Because there are going to be trade-offs, right? It might be speed versus quality or speed versus geographical distribution. So try to have the conversation. If there are dependencies in that respect, i.e. conflicting key results, try to have the conversation about which is the one that at the end of the quarter, if you succeed on, we're all high-fiving and going to the pub.
That's great. We got a comment earlier from someone asking about efficient ways not to have a documentation burden. And I think at that point you were talking about the volume of OKRs and the scale of the process and trying to keep that efficient. So the question really is, what suggestions do you have for how people achieve that? Maybe you've got some practical examples where you've done that in a real world scenario.
Yeah, there's two parts to that. One which was raised right at the beginning about the challenges, having too many OKRs. At the end of the day, no matter what tools and automation you use, if you had 600 OKRs and key results across the organization, it's going to be a documentation burden. Somebody has to add it in. So there's a way of working, a norm which you have to start setting up, and you're going to need your senior leadership buy-in here.
Just lost connection for a second.
I do that is you start. No, sorry. What is the most important one for now? And so if you can sort of focus on that sort of stuff, that's the key thing. So use the words. Which one of these 10 key results that you've got there are the most important for now?
Yeah.
And then the other part was then find an efficient way to do it. I mean, I have transformations that I've worked through, we've run it on spreadsheets, but what happens is there tends to still be a lot of copying and pasting. So if you're starting to see the copying and pasting, once you've got it down to an element of this is, your process is set in, you've got the number of down to manageable, start looking at tools that you can use to help map that OKRs to execution. And the best tools to use and track the ones that can map them, and then also copy and paste to another tool, which is your Jira or your workflow management tool or anything else. So that's the sort of the tip, because actually what you want your OKRs and be able to link the work to those OKRs.
Okay, great. Now I've got a couple more. Could you explain more about the setting objective 40% bottom up with 60% top down guidance?
Yeah, there's a lot of challenge early on when you do a lot of top down guidance. Oh, that's micromanagement. That's not agile. We can't do that. However, the one of the key principles to make OKRs successful is the concept. If you haven't heard of it, there's sort of strong alignment enables autonomy. And what that sort of means is it's okay to have strong alignment, that top-down guidance. So, but what I want to do is set the what and the why top down. So you get the senior leaders in your organization to be really clear on what they want to achieve and why. And then let the team figure out the how. When you sort of at that top level, 60% top down means 60% of your whats and whys are coming.
I think we're fighting with Paul's connection here, so he'll come back in a sec. We lost you for a second there, Paul, if you want to just carry on. Okay,
sorry about that. Yeah, the key thing for me is getting the focus on the top down being the focus on setting the what, the why, but often there are things that you need to do within your business unit, technical debt, trainings, those sorts of things which are really important that are not sort of top down guided. Things that you need to build to make your and ensure, right? Setting up that longer term play. That's what that bottom up means. The stuff that is not essentially important coming down for the top, but is important from sort of across for that part of the business unit or for that team. That's what the bottom up means.
Okay, great.
And they don't have to match.
Let's try it.
That's why you can separate 40% and that 60% other separately.
We need to extend the webinar for another hour. We've got so many questions coming in now. They're all excited about your answers here. What's a sensible way of defining targets if I feel the targets are often made out of thin air? Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. And so the best way to start, and like I said at the beginning, the focus of this webinar is about where to start. The best way to start the targets is get that KPI list I talked about and use one of those as your target.
Okay.
Because
we're struggling with your connection here, Paul. We're struggling with your connection here. You cut out again.
Secondly, sorry, if you can hear me again now. Yeah. So secondly, they're owned by the organisation, and secondly, people understand them. That's the sort of the key goal here. And then looking at them and is it reasonable? Is it too much of a stretch? look at it where you're going and have that conversation about how much of a stretch it actually is.
Okay. Let's try another one. And I'm running out of time here for all the questions coming in, so we're going to have to follow up with a few of you afterwards on some of these questions. Here's a good one. Is it acceptable to have binary key results? And is there a preference to leading and lagging key results? Also, what is the best way for a department and team OKRs to cascade down from the company objectives?
Yeah, so a couple of questions in there. The binary OKRs are okay, just don't have too many of them. And the only reason is it's not a great experience if they all fail and you get 0. Because the way you score OKRs, they're either yes or no. There's not, oh, I'm partway there, I sort of got there, I'm going to make a market status at 50%. Unfortunately, try to be pretty strict on the scoring. It's 0 or 1, so it's a 0 or 1. There's no 0.5 if it is a binary one. You can't half deliver a plan. You can't half get approval.
Yep.
But when you start, if you try and push everyone to measurements, you will fail. Like, you've got to get people comfortable with doing these things. And some areas,
there
like
we go. He's back.
Yeah, just not all of them. That would be my main thing. And then the second bit of that question was cascading, correct? Which is,
yeah,
how do you cascade? And it becomes a bit of a science when you cascade. It's the key result of the level above just becomes the O of the next level down. So think about a basic driver tree. So I've got a business unit having an O of look at the ones before we had as, launch the sustainability campaign. And then one of the key results was develop the social media campaign, right? So the social media team would have the objective of launch the campaign with an engagement score.
Okay.
Like the team vote takes the key result as the O, as their O.
Okay, good. Right, we've got a couple more questions in just a couple of minutes. How can we measure that the use of OKRs brings value to the company?
Yeah, so I think you've got to believe that your strategy is the right strategy to some degree. So you want to link your OKRs to your strategy. So often when you're writing the OKRs, if you think about even laying out the memo itself, you can often put the strategic pillars and the OKRs under that strategic pillar. So you want to make sure you're doing your objective linked to the strategy. Of course, then you're going to ask the next question, how do you know the strategy's delivering value to the business? Well, there's an element of test and learn based on if I deliver those, I'm delivering to the strategy. And that's when you still need your KPIs and your scorecards, right? Those things still need to be tracking up because they're the things overall that how you measure the performance of any business on. So make sure you link them to your scorecards and link them to your strategy.
Great, thank you. How do OKRs differ from other benefits management frameworks?
I mean, look, there's many different ones out there, and people choose the ones that are solving the right problem for their organization. I get that. Why have OKRs become so successful is probably maybe it's a cheat, but maybe it's an easier way to answer this, is because they allow the data-driven of this. So they allow the data-driven approach to the grading of this. So it's not just like we talked about with the SMART goals, the difference there, number one. The second thing, it's not just about the OKR. If all you have is the OKR, I don't think you're getting the benefits from it. It's about the conversation around it, the process around it. So I think they've been successful because they're the companies that do it well and do it the best, put it in line with a process change, not just implementing them, letting people go do them individually however they want. It's part of the way the business is operated, the part of the way the business prioritizes together, the business makes prioritization decisions as one. That's why I think they've been so successful.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. We've actually got a string of other questions people have sent me as well, but what I'd like to do is draw a line under them and we can answer other questions offline. So thank you all for listening to Paul today. I hope there's been great value, and thank you to Paul for speaking with us. If you'd like to have a further conversation with us here in Europe, we've got David Story, who leads the UK office, Piotr, who's been on the call with us today and leads our Warsaw office, and myself, who's the growth partner across Europe. Our contact details are there on the slide, and we'd very much welcome a chance to have a conversation with you and help you on your transformation. And of course, we can put you in touch with Paul should you wish to have a chat with Paul on a specific topic. So what I'd recommend is that you find Adaptovate on LinkedIn and you sign up for our newsletter. You also have a look on our website for the regular articles that are coming out. And we're going to announce shortly the next webinar and the next exciting topic. So thank you very much again for joining us today. Thank you for all your interaction on the polls and making it really exciting. And then, we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much, and goodbye from Adaptovate.